Addergoole is a small township in North County Mayo, on the west coast of Ireland. Addergoole's centre is the tiny village of Laherdon. In 1912, the population of Laherdon was only 96 people, living in 22 houses. The Addergoole story was one of the most tragic of the passenger crew stories of Titanic. There were 14 Irish people from one area called Addergoole Parish in County Mayo. Of the 14, only 3 survived. In 1912, Ireland was a very tough place to live. It was a poverty-stricken country where people lived under a cold, wet climate. Large families of 10 to 12 people were crammed into 3-room houses. Everyone was poor, and every member of the family worked around the clock just to survive. Because life was so tough, communities were very close-knit and depended on each other to survive. One small hitch, such as a wet summer, a bad harvest, or an illness, could literally ruin a family. At this time, nearly every family in Ireland had a relative abroad. New laws meant that only one child in a family could inherit the family land. Most families had between 6 and 12 children. This meant that the rest of the children, once they came of age, had to find work elsewhere. In Ireland, there was no work, even in the cities, especially for poor, uneducated countrymen and women. Marriage or immigration was the only option. Newspapers carried dozens of ads every day, prompting people to travel on the fastest, the largest, the most luxurious of liners. The shipping lines competed aggressively for business, as steerage was where the companies made their greatest profits. Ticket agents roamed the countryside, knocking on doors with brochures, persuading people of the better life they could have abroad. All of those who could afford to go went in droves. While the Addergoole 14 were planning their new lives in America, only 100 miles away in Belfast, construction had started on what was to be the greatest ship in the world. Harland and Wolff employed over 14,000 workers during this period. With such a massive weekly payroll, the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast became the biggest private employer in all of Ireland at that time. When Titanic was launched and in the water, she had the most expensive fitting out of any ship. The facilities were state-of-the-art: a heated swimming pool, a gym completed with multi-gym machines. The famous grand staircase was hand-built from oak and mahogany by Belfast's master craftsmen. Because steerage class was where the shipping companies made their greatest profits, the White Star Line decided that the Titanic would revolutionize this class. Steerage on Titanic was real luxury. It wasn't called steerage, it was called third class. The finished ship was resplendent, sleek and elegant, deemed the largest and fastest ship in the world. For the Addergoole 14, the experience of being on Titanic was amazing. It was the first time they saw electric lights, the first time they had the luxury of a bed to themselves. It was the first time they had proper washing and toilet facilities. It was the first time they had experienced silver cutlery, linen napkins, and tablecloths. The first days the Addergoole 14 spent aboard the Titanic were among the best days of their lives. And life aboard Titanic reinforced their expectations of what their new lives in America would be like for them. When Titanic hit the iceberg, the Addergoole 14 were in different parts of the ship. Some were in their cabins, others were at a party. The impact wasn't felt by everyone. In fact, the shudder was so slight, nobody thought the ship was in any danger. The stewards had told the Addergoole 14 that there was nothing to worry about, that they were to stay in steerage, and above all, stay calm. They were told that they would receive further instruction as soon as possible. When the Addergoole group got to the lifeboat decks, there were only 3 lifeboats left. In the panic, the group lost each other in the crowd. Those who actually entered the water most likely wouldn't know how to swim. If they wore a life jacket, you can't swim with a life jacket on you. You float like a cork. The more you struggle, the worse it becomes. You use up all your energy, then you get cold. You last about 14 to 15 minutes. then you sink into an unconscious state. Of the Addergoole 14, only 3 survived Titanic: Annie Kelly, Annie McGowan, and Bridget McDermott. On arrival in New York, they were taken to St. Vincent's Hospital, where they remained for 2 weeks. All 3 were badly traumatized and very weak. The village of Laherdon in Ireland still feels the pain of the Titanic tragedy over 100 years ago. The story of the Addergoole 14 nearly died with the last generation in Laherdon. The pain of their loss was so intense that the villagers stopped talking about it completely. In recent years, they have begun to embrace this legacy. They are now actively recovering this history, and there's evidence of this all around the village of Laherdon. In the last decade, the people of Laherdon have been busy traveling and communicating with people around the world, collecting, rebuilding, and archiving the documents and records of the Addergoole 14. But the most intriguing of all Laherdon's commemorations takes place here every April 15th at 2 a.m. A candlelight procession slowly winds its way through the village to the local church. Here a ceremony is held. This is a ritual created by the people of Laherdon to unite the community and to help them to tell their story together. The story of how 14 of their ancestors left this village over 100 years ago to seek hope and a better life in America, but never got there. At exactly 2:20 a.m., the time the Titanic finally disappeared into the sea, the relatives of the Addergoole 14 ring the church bell for each of the 14. The people of Addergoole are telling their story once again.